Good evening and welcome to tonight's event, The Black Family Who Built America, with authors Cheryl McKissack Daniel and Charlamagne Tha God. Titans of industry. We are delighted to have you all join us here today at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library. My name is Deshaun Holcomb. I'm one of the clerical supervisors here. And one thing I would like y'all to do is when y'all leave, get a library card. If you don't have one already, you know, it's a beautiful thing to have. Get yourself involved. And I would like to thank SNFL for making programs like tonight possible. I would like to remind you, encourage you at the website for programs like 7 Stories Up. Contribute. Come in. We have great things going on. I'm actually reading off script right now because I'm like truly excited. Like I've been here 22 years. I've been in this building, so it's been a blessing. And now it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's guest, Cheryl McKissack Daniel. I can't say enough. She's an American civil engineer, businesswoman, the president and CEO of McKissack McKissack, a design and construction company founded by her grandfather, Moses McKissack III, and her granduncle, Calvin Lunsford McKissack. It's the oldest black-owned architecture and construction company in the whole United States. Over its 120-year history, McKissack McKissack has completed over 6,000 public and privately funded planning, design, and construction projects. Incredible. The McKissack family's fingerprint have been left all across the United States, spanning from the Reconstruction to contemporary times. Through projects like Morris Memorial Building, Capers CME Church, John F. Kennedy International Airport, and Philadelphia's Lincoln Financial Field. CTG, Charlamagne Tha God, is a multimedia mogul best known for hosting iHeartRadio's The Breakfast Club with DJ Envy. In addition to starring on television, he's also the founder of the Black Effect Podcast Network, his own production company, See the God World LLC, and he hosts the popular podcast Brilliant Idiots with Andrew Schultz. Hailing from the small town of Moncks Corner, South Carolina, Charlamagne quickly rose to become one of the most compelling media personalities. He's the author of Get Honest or Die Lying, Why Small Talk Sucks, the New York Times best-selling Black Privilege, and the global bestseller Shook One, Anxiety Playing Tricks on Me. Without further ado, y'all, let's welcome Cheryl and Charlamagne. Let's go.
That was a long walk. How y'all feeling tonight? Y'all good? Yes. Thank y'all for coming out. Thank y'all for coming out, man, to build with this queen right here, Cheryl McKissack Daniel, and this amazing book, The Black Family Who Built America, one of the most important books I think that was released this year. How are you feeling?
Thank you. I'm so excited.
I'm happy to be here with you.
We're finally getting this done.
You can't be running up like that, no? Yeah. I just saw something coming out my peripheral. What was that, man? Tell us what made you want to write this book now?
Well, one thing for sure, this has been a 23-year process in writing this book because I found my family tree when I was like 11 years old. And it was just fascinating to me. You know, the family tree was scribbled on. It had all these lines going in all these different directions. And, you know, I looked at it, I said, I could just tell it was valuable and that I needed to take it and redo it and fill in more information. So that's really where this started. Just a desire to understand legacy and my history and where I come from. And so this book right now is important because it is certifying Black history, okay? In a time where people, or not everybody, but this administration wants to get rid of our history.
That's right. That's right.
And I mean, this has happened to us over and over again. You know, we don't even have birth records from back in slavery. But then to have to go through all this again, this book says this is a receipt. This is a receipt that we were actually here, that Black excellence has always existed. Whether you want to recognize it or not, we are here. We're not going anywhere.
That's right. Could you speak to that a little bit more? Because I don't think people realize how important it is to know your genealogy. And, you know, people be having all these conversations about reparations and what that would look like. You wouldn't even be able to get it if you can't trace your history back to even say that you are a descendant of somebody who was enslaved.
See, that's why I texted you last night. Dwayne, who's taking pictures around here, he and I, there's Dwayne, we took the wrong train back from Manhattan last night. It was the slow boat. And we got on there and started brainstorming it. And I'm like, Dwayne, everywhere I go, I'm hearing about people asking me, how do you do a family tree? And I was in Nashville last week, and a guy stood up. He said, my family had property. I know who owned it, but we don't know what happened to it. And so that is why these family trees are important, because if you start off with the people and then start putting death certificates, birth certificates, marriage certificates, who owns what property, even if you just heard about it and you don't even, have any records of it, if you start putting all that information down, it's like the law of attraction. Things and information just start coming to you. And we have got to certify our history. So I texted him last night, and I said, what the ultimate to this is, when it comes to reparations, we're going to need records.
That's right.
And this is how we can accumulate our records. Now, what I say about reparations. It should be in the form of not having to pay taxes. It shouldn't be a check.
Oh, I agree. No federal taxes for 400 years.
Right.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure I'd like to fund the new ballroom at the White House now.
No. I agree wholeheartedly. I agree. Tell us about your family's origin story, because that's the other thing I find so interesting about McKissack and McKissack, like how it started and who started it and when it started.
So this story really goes back 230 years to the first descendant of the McKissack family, and that's Moses McKissack I. He came to this country as a slave and was taught the trade of making bricks by his slave master, William McKissack from Scotland. And then Moses McKissack II was a brick maker and a master carpenter. And Moses McKissack III and Calvin McKissack both were the first Black licensed architects in America, with license 117 and 118 in the state of Tennessee. And them getting their license in Tennessee in the Deep South, going through racism, you got to read the book to understand all that they went through. And then the company was passed down to my father, who was an architect as well. And then when he became ill, my fearless mother stepped in and ran the business after being a housewife for 22 years. And then eventually I went back to help her, and then I ended up buying the company from her and taking over.
The reason I love that story is because, when you think about everything that's happening now, people act like it's the end of the world and nothing, good can come of this, right? But I feel like, in the worst of circumstances is when some of the, greatest Black innovation has happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The first, Moses and Calvin McKissack incorporated us in 1905, but my great-grandfather, which was Moses McKissack II, incorporated right after emancipation in a town called Pulaski, Tennessee. Pulaski, Tennessee, in 1866 is where the Ku Klux Klan started. And I often think about how on earth did this man start his business, become independent, and build an economic system with the backdrop of the Ku Klux Klan in this little itty-bitty town. That's where I would like to do a lot of research next, because I do want to understand the dynamic there. In the book, we allude to the fact that he had the blessings of many of the elite white people in that town, and they were providing some type of protection.
What did that protection look like?
Looked like the Ku Klux Klan not hanging him in a... Seriously, because they were known, any Black person who, exhibited any type of independency, that's who they went after.
Mm-hmm. What kind of research did you do for the book?
Well, I had Nick Chiles, who was a great historian.
Salute to Nick.
Yes, and this is our second book. Our first book was with a historian who was a writer, and she actually helped us fill in a lot of the blanks. But the story was chronological. And if you have a story that's chronological over 230 years, it's just downright boring. So my mother and I read the book, and we were like, oh, no, this is going in file 13, which for young people, that's the trash. Because it was putting me to sleep, okay? It is my story. And so being able to have that information and then compile it another way made a lot of sense for us. But there's still so much research out there. There were papers that have been written at Fisk universities, students that had done their dissertation on the McKissack family. And so we were able to get a lot of information from Fisk University and Tennessee State.
How much information in the book was just family legacy that was just passed down from other generations?
Well, like I said, the family tree was the key to that. I mean, as far as legacy being passed down. And then, of course, some of the stories I lived through. We go back to Moses McKissack III, and then my father and my mother. I lived through all of that. I remember sitting at Calvin McKissack's house, going to dinner on Sundays, and getting dressed up with white gloves to go to my great uncle's house and listen to their stories. I remember my parents flying to Haiti and meeting with Papa Doc, and my twin sister and I, staying home, with a babysitter. I remember all those days. I remember Z. Alexander Luby. Let me get that right. My mother would give me a hard time. I remember those individuals, John Hope Franklin, at Fisk University. I'm trying to remember Hazel O'Leary, who was president of Fisk University when I was a board of trustees. So.
And I want people to read the book if you haven't already, but can you at least tell them the story about how you stumbled across the family tree? Because it wasn't on purpose, right?
Well, it was in a family Bible, and I knew the Bible was there. I was just going through books, and the family tree fell out. It was folded up. It was a nice size sheet too, but
somebody did that on purpose. I'm gonna put this in the Bible, okay? If she find it, then she's doing the right thing.
She'll find it if she's doing the right thing. Yeah, I'm sure I needed prayer that day. But that's pretty much how I found it.
Did you grow up knowing your family history? Like, I mean, I knew that you would see the people, the adults around you, living a life, and you knew that they were doing something. Did you actually know the history of your family?
Yes.
Okay.
We would go back to Pulaski once a year. My father's cousin had a funeral home, and so she had this big Queen Anne event. Her name was Anne. And there they would celebrate the McKissacks. We had, family barbecues and picnics and things like that. So I did know our history. I vividly remember, going to groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings and things like that with my father, with his brothers, and with my great uncle.
Did you ever think about doing anything else?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. I did not think or want to be an engineer. I wanted to be an airline stewardess.
Really?
I wanted to fly around the world and be cute. But I grew up in a day where you didn't have that choice. I grew up in a day where your parents directed your steps. And so it was clear to me that may be what I wanted to do, but that was after I went to Howard and became an engineer because they weren't going to allow anything else. My parents determined where I went to high school, where I went to elementary school. They charted that entire course. We didn't have cell phones and internets. All we had was each other in our community, and we had real people who were influencing us. And so we were getting the truth. And so our parents didn't play around with that.
Was it hard to give your children that type of independence?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right, Cole? I see you over there. He grew up with both of my daughters. And, I think that generation is the first generation that had cell phones, cell phones and the internet at an early age. And it's been a huge influence. I'll never forget my daughter, Daryl, when she was at George Washington, she was switching her degree. And because she was doing pre-med like her dad, she's like, oh, Lord, this is way too much. And so she said, I need help to figure out what, degree I should pursue. And she gave me an email with 100 and some odd different, lines of degrees. I'm like, what is this? This is just way too many choices, way too many choices. And, so it's very hard to navigate today with all the choices, with all the quick snippets of information that young people are getting. And they don't take the time to really go all the way into it, dive into all the details and understand it front, back, side, and side, center, everything. They don't do that. They're not getting, the deep knowledge that they should get, when it comes to charting out their course. So now, yes, my daughters are sitting on the front row.
And they want to take the mantle.
I think Charlamagne says we've been hanging out. They've gotten more excited. Let's put it like that.
Would you have been disappointed if they didn't want to, though?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. Not like my parents would have been. And, that could have been my contribution to where things are right now. Maybe I should have been more like my parents and not tolerate, all of the, I guess it's looseness that we give our children today. We're going to let you find your own way. But the mistake that I think that a lot of parents, including myself, make, we think that we're raising our kids based on what we do. But it's not like that anymore. The internet is raising our kids. They're looking at the internet more than they're looking at the patterns and what we're trying to teach them.
Sadly.
Yeah. Sadly.
Did you learn any new facts about your family while writing this book?
Yes, I did. Nick and I make a case as to why the McKissack family was able to last 5 generations, because the statistics are not in our favor. For a family business to pass down to the second generation, it's 40%. And for it to pass to the third generation, it's 18%. And for it to pass to the fourth generation, it's 3%.
Wow.
And here we are, 5th generation.
Man,
and those
come
statistics,
on, clap it up for that. Wow. Wow.
And those statistics are not for Black family-owned businesses, okay? When you look at Black family-owned businesses, it's even less. And so, what was the question?
Did you learn any new facts about your family?
Okay, so what I was trying to say is we made the case as to how the McKissacks were actually able to survive through slavery and Jim Crow and, the racism of the South. And so what I found out, it started back in slavery. They were in North Carolina, and, unlike what was depicted on Roots, and when we think of slavery, we think of 500 slaves and, a white family of 5 or 6. That's not how it was in North Carolina. They had large plantations, but it wasn't like that most of the time. And so the McKissacks were with a slave master that had like 10 or 12 slaves. And so they were more like extended staff, extended family, and so that created an environment that was a little bit more protective. Also, it allowed them to move about a lot freer than, other states that had laws against, slaves traveling outside of their own property. The McKissacks were able to travel, and they had to travel because they were working with their slave master to build all over the South.
What do you think? What do you think has been the key to the longevity? Like, how have y'all been around? How have y'all been able to be around for 5 generations?
Well, in the book, I talk about the 5 P's of the McKissack, which is perseverance, preparedness, purpose, and persistence. And then I added the 5th P, which is prayer, because I really do think prayer has something to do with it. The McKissacks also tithe of their time. They tithe of whatever they could. They would build churches, black churches, at cost. You know, that was like the main gathering spot for the black community. And so a lot of it had to do with tithing. Okay, giving, you know.
The pastor still ask y'all for money after y'all built the church?
Yes, I'm sure.
Damn. And that cost? Y'all ain't even, wow.
Of course, yes. But then, you know, they built the Morris Memorial Building in downtown Nashville in 1926. And that was founded by Booker T. Washington. Now, the McKissacks could not get paid all the money by the Southern Baptist Convention, who was the developer of the church. And so we had free rent for 55 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it did come back to them.
Mm-hmm. Tell the people the importance of tithing for people who don't know. I'm serious.
Well, the more you give, the more you get.
Mm-hmm.
That's what tithing is.
Mm-hmm.
You have to give to get. You know, if you want to excel at school, you got to give that time and effort into whatever courses you are studying, and then you will get in return a good grade. That's basically what tithing is. And it's a system that actually happens, and it's not in clear view for everyone to see. It is more of a spiritual system.
Gee, not nowadays. Nowadays, they're telling you to line up. You got $2,000, line up right there. $1,000, line up right here.
Oh, that's right. And I'll lay my hands on you.
Were there any challenging moments you had while writing this book?
Yeah, it was, I mean, it's a big effort. So, you know, just putting in the time alone, all the interviews, you know, my mother is 95 now. And so getting her to interview with Nick, I would say probably 4 years ago, you know, that was all a challenge. We went down to Spring Hill, Tennessee, which is where the McKissacks were. While in slavery, they were there. And there's a place called Ripavilla. And the guy who runs the place told me, we have no records of the McKissacks being here. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. This is where my mother told me they definitely were here. Why did they build this monument to Moses McKissack II? And the guy was like, I'm sorry. So I'm like, I just went over to one of the books. They had all these books, and I just started going through it, and I see slave records. And I find Moses McKissack. Now, I'm at the Southern Book Festival this week on Saturday. They have new leadership now at Ripavilla. And the new young man that took over, he came to me in line after holding 2 or 3 of my books for me to sign. And he says, Cheryl, I am so sorry. That guy, I can't even remember his name. I said, I don't want to know his name. I don't want to know his name. He said, he's lying. That is not true. Your family was definitely here. So, an obstacle.
What was the point of him volunteering?
And as a
line?
result of that, remember, Nick, we decided not to put it in the book. But we just found out they invited us back down this weekend. We just found out this weekend that what we had originally said was true.
Wow. What was the point of him volunteering that lie? Like, what was the reason? Or did he just
Because
not know?
this guy was genuinely interested in the history, and he did not want to erase it. The new person.
Gotcha. I'm saying, what was the reason for the person,
other guy?
Yeah, they're telling you that lie. Like,
I don't know. I don't know. And, we're there with Nick, the writer. He just told us, your family was never here.
somebody said they don't need a reason.
They don't need a reason.
What lessons have you learned about being a leader? Because I mean, one thing you said that one of the P's is perseverance, and when I read the book, that's what I got from you. It's like you just would not take no for an answer in a lot of these situations.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like that right now. I mean, I can't tell you, as a civil engineer, a builder in New York City. New York is the largest construction market in America, $80 billion a year. You know what I encounter. How many times am I in the room, the only woman, and definitely the only Black woman? And so, I don't know. I think some of it's conscious, some of it's subconscious, but people will act like you're not even in the room. Like you are thin air. Like they don't see you. You see people gathering and talking, and you're not included. And so my mother had taught me a long time ago, don't let that intimidate you. You go up to people and tell them who you are. So I would do that. Every event I would go to, I would pick 5 people, and I would make myself, even if I didn't want to do it. I look like this is easy, like it's okay to talk in public and do public speaking. I was not like that. I was more of an introvert. But I would make myself go and speak to people. And some people don't care, but then the ones who do, you begin to understand that you are bringing value, that you do have something that people want to hear. And so that's one of the things I have learned, is just to be comfortable in who I am, know that I have value, I am worth the conversation, and to say hello to people. I mean, I think the other thing I have learned from the McKissacks is excellence can be the loudest protest. We're talking about the McKissack family who were architects. And architecture was reserved for the elite, So 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, they got their architectural license. So they just broke that mold completely, and they let everyone know, long before diversity was a corporate matter or a buzzword, we are going to be a part of this, whether you want us to be or not. And as a result of them being able to deliver on excellence, excellent drawings, sound buildings, for them to do that, they not only built structures, they created a safe place for all Black people to know that if someone tells you don't deserve to be there, you do.
Yeah, it seems like whether it was 1905 or 2025, it was y'all were always trying to overcome racial oppression as an architectural company.
Absolutely. But look, here we are 230 years after Moses McKissack I laid his first brick. We are here. And we represent an unshakable pillar of resiliency and ingenuity in a country that is still grappling with stuff we've already resolved. Equity, representation, inclusion. We've already resolved all these things, but we're back to it all over again. And this story, this book, is a mirror and it's a beacon. It's a mirror of how Black people have had to struggle in professional areas, but it's also a beacon because it tells a story of perseverance meeting purpose. They did not give up. They were serious about being a part of what they wanted to do, how they saw their destiny.
How can this story help people navigate this current climate that we're in, especially from a business perspective?
Yeah, and it's happening. For those of you that don't know what MWBE stands for, it's Minority Women-Owned Businesses. And New York has been the leader in inclusion of MWBE firms. And recently, about 3 weeks ago, Penn Station came out, the redevelopment of Penn Station through Amtrak with no MWBE goals and no service disabled veteran goals.
Wow.
This is the first time I've seen anything like this. I mean, goals, MWBE goals started in New York in the late 80s. And now here we are with a huge redevelopment proposal out on the street with 0 goals. And so firms are, larger white firms are now approaching McKissack, the ones who understand that the pendulum is going to swing back. Okay? And when it swings back, you better be prepared because it's probably going to be even stronger than it was before. They're still reaching out to our firm saying, how can you get involved? How can we bring you in? We can't call it diversity, but we can say, okay, you provide risk management, you provide stakeholder management, you know how to deal with the MTA, and bring us in regardless of not needing an MWBE.
Yeah, I wonder at what point does it, do they stop saying, okay, we need them because it's diversity, but just because they're good?
Yeah, and I'm proud to say I think that we're there.
All right.
In some respects. I mean, a lot of this is economics. You know, why split up the pie when you can have 100% of it, regardless of how good you are?
I want to talk about some of the projects and building sites that y'all been a part of, because I know each one has a different story. And I'm gonna name a few of them, and you just tell me, how does it make you feel, even when you just drive by it now, right? Like, what do you think of the National Civil Rights Museum in Tennessee?
Oh, that was a great one. That was one of my mother's projects. And this is at the Lorraine Motel where Dr. King was shot. And my mother was awarded the architecture of that building. And, I just remember the history of it. I remember how the Black politicians in the Black community, they all rallied around my mother to make sure that she would get the work and not a white architect in Memphis. And this was, mid-'80s? So, when my mother took over the business, that was before women could even borrow money from the bank without a man's signature.
Wow.
And that was in 1988 when the Women's Business Act went into effect and women were able to actually borrow money. Now just think about that.
The 88.
88. That was when Spike Lee put out She's Gotta Have It. And DJ Envy, remember when I said doing the bump, he remembered the artist who did that.
Yeah,
EU.
Yep.
EU. And
it's doing
Colin
the butt too, by the
Powell
way,
was running for
doing the bump is something else, That's
But that was just yesterday.
What about the Barclays Center?
Well, all I can think about is Jay-Z. The Barclays Center was good, because it was a very strong Black woman named Bertha Lewis who helped me navigate that entire process to become a part of that project. And anyone who was in Brooklyn 20 years ago, you know who Bertha Lewis is, an Acorn. And she was just a force of nature. Matter of fact, I'm going to an event next week where she's being honored so I can take her book, because she is the first chapter of my book.
Yeah, that's right.
But that was an interesting time because I heard about this arena that was coming, that Bruce Ratner, was buying this team. And I'm like, we have to be a part of this because it's in Brooklyn. Brooklyn, has a high number of African Americans, although they're from the Caribbean and everywhere in the Caribbean. And we're from Nashville, Tennessee. So I had to make the rounds, but I just convinced people that construction would generate a lot of jobs and a lot of wealth for the Black community. And so I kept telling people, look, if you put us in, we're going to make sure our subcontractors are, Black and brown. We're going to make sure the people working on this project are Black and brown. And so it's going to be an ecosystem. And that's really how I galvanized, the support that we got to win that project.
That's another part of the book I like when you speak about that ecosystem. You speak about what's her name?
Bertha Lewis.
Bertha Lewis. You speak about Miss Bertha Lewis. You speak about Magic Johnson. Like, speak to the people about how unity and group operation, really helps in those situations. Well,
I can't talk about Black solidarity unless I talk about you. I met Charlamagne on the Breakfast Club, and liked him right away. We had a kindred spirit. And then Chan said, she's writing a book. And Charlamagne said, I'll publish it. And, ever since then, he has put everything he has behind this book. And so to me, that is Black solidarity.
Thank you.
Now, when it comes to ownership, well, he owns the publishing, as Steve Harvey says. He owns the publishing. The projects that have had significant meaning is when Magic Johnson and Loop Capital are the owners. Because when you have Black ownership from the beginning, they should know that they should hire Black firms. Jim Reynolds just called me up and said, Cheryl, I want you to be our program manager for JFK Terminal 1. No RFP, Dope. No nothing.
Dope.
But your responsibility is to make sure we have a minimum of 30% MWBE participation and workforce on this $9.5 billion project.
Wow.
Which is huge. There was nothing that size in New York City, and there was no precedent that we could make the numbers that we're making. But we are. And it has been a 7-year process. But it goes back to Black leadership. I remember our kickoff meeting and sitting in the room, and for the first time, there were more people of color than white people in the room to kick off this multi-billion-dollar project. I'd never seen it.
Wow. I'm glad that they're still doing that. I don't feel like we should even say that out loud nowadays. I feel like we should keep that to ourselves. I'm glad.
I'm glad you brought your security.
I think we're taking some questions from the audience, right? Yeah. Okay.
Right. The person didn't put their name on this stuff. In your opinion.
Oh, wait. Okay, try it now.
In your opinion, what ways in these interesting and precarious times can Black families build and preserve their legacies?
It starts with writing it down, and I go back to anyone can do a family tree. I mean, your parents, and then if you have kids, your kids. That's 3 generations right there. That's a legacy. And so I say you should write it down, and then begin to just fill in the blanks with all the information you can think of. Pictures, deeds to property, stock, whatever it is, you need to write it down.
Very important. To Cheryl McKissack from, this is Aisha Alexander, Alexander, I don't want to mispronounce the name. Aisha, salute to you. With the rollback of DEI initiatives, what advice do you have for future Black aspiring, can't really make them one out, engineers and architects on navigating these challenges of education and entrepreneurship?
Well, I can tell you what my grandparents and my forefathers did after Birth of a Nation came out and they no longer had white patriots. They turned to the Black community and they began to work for their own community. And we should do the same thing, work for our own community. There was always that debate, and it's in the book with Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. And Du Bois would always say, we need to patronize each other. That is like the most important thing. Not assimilate, we need to just patronize each other. And maybe, that's the blessing. But I still believe that this is only for a period of time. Things are definitely getting rolled back, and, it can have an effect over the next 4 or 5 years. But the pendulum always swings back. Mm-hmm. And when the pendulum swings back this time, it's probably going to be even more stringent. So it's not just going to be, how many MWBE firms are you using? I think the decision makers are going to look at firms and say, well, how many people of color do you have in your firm? Mm-hmm. And if you don't have that in your firm, we don't want to use you. Mm-hmm. Now, there are companies that I'm working with now that I've had meetings with in the last several weeks who are doubling down on their diversity. They're just not calling it that. They're doubling down because they know that it brings, it increases profit, but they also know that the tables are going to turn, and they want to be ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
This person didn't write their name, but they put commending you and the family for all you have done and went through. I assume that's you, Ms. McKissack. They say, great job, Charlamagne. They're in your support. They have the question, I have 4 daughters in college, and as young black women, what do you suggest we do to stress with them to be successful in today's times?
Well, I think they should know their value. Okay. They should know their value, and, that they have a lot to bring to the table. And they need to read this book and other books. Charlamagne's other book is Don Staley. What an amazing book that is.
Mm-hmm. Uncommon Favor.
Yeah, Uncommon Favor. We need to understand our history and our contributions to this country. All that we have brought is important to know. And I would teach that to my kids right now. Am I doing a good job at teaching?
They approve.
She like, you all right.
Question from Olivia Logan for Cheryl. You mentioned that you were in a position to buy your family business. With boomers positioning themselves to retire, millennials will have businesses to acquire. What are practical things you did that we can do to put ourselves in a position to acquire businesses?
Well, I can't say I was in the position. It was just something I had to do. And so when I bought my mother's company, I was paying myself less money than I was paying her. Because it was a sacrifice, but it was a sacrifice worth taking, something that I knew that I needed to do. And so sometimes the opportunity is there and you have to seize it. It's not that you are planning to do something like what I did. At least it wasn't for me. What I am planning is my succession. So that when it's time for my kids to take over, there'll be something there that's long lasting, that's sustainable. And so that's what I say to business owners. You have to think about what your exit is, and you have to plan your succession.
How do you know when that is?
Well, mine's 2030.
No, you have a date,
I have a date. I have been saying that for the longest. I have been saying that for at least 6 or 7 years. Mm-hmm. I have put in place a succession that really went into effect in February, but it will be announced in January. I'm announcing a new president and CEO who's taking my position.
Wow.
A new COO. And all these people have been with our firm at least 18, 20 years. I have a new chief financial officer and a new development officer. And I'm going to be around for the next 4 years to make sure my succession works and that it's smooth. Because when you look at succession planning, you have, two sides of it. You have the management side and the ownership side. Well, I don't even know what to do with the ownership side right now, but I do know what to do on the management side. So I'm dealing with the management side first because it's the low-hanging fruit for me, and I'm putting in a team that can grow and sustain this business.
How hard is it to let go? Like, do you want them to have your managing style, or are you willing to let a new managing style?
It's taken a lot of coaching. Not gonna be. I'm going to be honest, and the person I chose as president, he and I have been together so long, and I'm like, he does everything pretty much the way I would do it,
Gotcha.
Close to it. He's his own person. Just so happened he's from Ghana, which is where the family is from, McKissack family is from. And so, he has the right personality that's going to keep the culture intact, because that to me is extremely important. We want to make sure our culture stays the same. We don't want to take on any other culture out there. And then if he makes a decision that, I'm kind of on the fence about or don't agree with, I just call my coach up. And I'm like, this happened. And she's like, breathe, Cheryl, breathe. They got to work through it. And I'm like, yes, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to smile. So, Albert, if you're out there when I'm smiling, you know what I'm thinking.
Right. Albert, don't F this up, okay? We're all watching. All right.
He's right.
I have one from Naomi Jordan, who's a junior in high school, and I'm going to open it up to both of you. So Naomi wants to know, how do you find the passion that you have for your work? She wants to know, what are some challenges you've faced along the way, and what's some advice you would give to your younger self? And I think it'd be great to hear from both of you.
Well, it's interesting. It's passion, but it's also just being unstoppable and persistent. Just knowing in your heart of hearts that you represent 4 or 5 generations, and it is not going to fall down on my watch, period. That's how I address everything that I do with respect to my business. And so, yes, there's some passion, but there's also some fear. And there's, a reckoning that I am going to be unstoppable on the matters that are going to keep this business afloat. And so challenges are always going to be there. I mean, that's not changing. I go through some real significant challenges in the book, like almost losing the company. And so I deal with those challenges by looking at the challenges my forefathers had. I look at what they've overcome, what they have faced. What we're facing right now seems like detrimental, but it really isn't as bad as what they faced back in their day. And so that gives me a lot of inspiration. I mean, even my mother, just think about it, 1988, couldn't even borrow money.
As a female producer, this is from Josephine, salute to Josephine. As a female producer seeking film financing, can you direct me to a platform of media mentoring that will help us tell our stories?
A platform of media mentoring? I guess you're asking, are you looking for media mentors? Are people who that have done
They're
it?
asking you to be the mentor. No.
Oh, I look to the people who came before us. I look to people like, Tyler Perry. I look to people like, get Clarence Avant, you know, especially when it comes to financing and finding financing for your productions. You know, there's always, I look to people like Byron Allen, like, you know, those are individuals who have done media and done it at the highest level. I look at people like Oprah Winfrey. I literally, you know, get books by them or read articles about them, watch interviews about them, like study them, because nothing is new. Like there's no idea original. There's nothing new under the sun. Like it's never what you do. It's, you know, it's how it's done. And all of these things have already been done. So I'm a person, you know, you were speaking about, you know, passion earlier. I definitely believe that passion is the thing that you would do, you know, for free. So for me, radio is my passion. That's what I poured my all into. And, you know, everything else from the, you know, book imprints or the movie production companies or, you know, whatever comes from that is fruit from that radio tree. But it starts with, you know, just finding, you know, whatever your purpose is and really having an intention more than anything. I know you said you were looking for financing, but, you know, it's like, why do you want to be in the movie business? What kind of, you know, movies do you even want to produce? I think that finding those things is more important than anything else. And then once you figure that out, you'll definitely figure out how to do it.
All right, folks, we're basically at time. I just want to give you a chance to share any final thoughts with the audience. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
I would like to ask, you know, Miss Cheryl McKissack Daniel, what impact do you want your book to have? And for everybody in this room that's going to read it, if they haven't read it already, what impact do you want it to have?
I want you to certify your stories. I want you to do a family tree. I want you to understand where you've come from. And it will help you chart your destiny.
The end. Y'all have a great night. We really appreciate y'all coming out. Thank you very much. Make some noise.